It happened quite recently, and after this story, I'm a little afraid to ride the elevator in the house where my grandmother lives. The 17-story building was one of the tallest buildings in our country, and there were rumors that it was built on some ancient cemetery. I don't know whether this is true or not, but anything can happen. There are two elevators in this house, a regular one and a freight elevator. Something happened to the cargo one, and therefore only the regular one worked. On it I went up to the floor I needed, sat with my grandmother, and drank tea. And now I'm going home. I called the elevator, but it was always occupied by someone. I hear that someone is driving it, gets out, someone else gets in, etc. I was already angry and was thinking of walking when suddenly the freight elevator opened. Oh, they fixed it, apparently, I thought, and went into it. The elevator took a very long time, and for some reason it stopped on the 6th floor, and as soon as it opened, it closed again and froze. No matter what buttons I pressed, he did not move. Everything is stuck. Let's knock on the elevator doors. Knock, knocked, knock. Nothing. Well, I think I got it. Then the light in the elevator suddenly starts flashing and turns off. At that same second, all the buttons on the panel lit up, and I suddenly heard a strange whisper, as if calling someone by name. Moreover, you cannot distinguish whether the voice is male or female. It was then that I got scared because, along with the whisper, I heard a grinding sound from under my feet as if someone was scratching the elevator from below. Let me yell and be at the door, and at that moment the light in the elevator comes on and I go down to the 1st floor. I fly out of the elevator like a bullet and rush towards the watchman. Why are you so scared? She asks me. Yes, you got stuck in the elevator. I spent half an hour in it. How did you get stuck? The elevator is working. He can, yes. And I was stuck in a cargo truck. It was then that the watchwoman got scared. And to my question, what's the matter? She answered, yes, there hasn't been a freight elevator in the mine for 6 months already. Shanxi, Xi'an woman was found starved to death inside the elevator with scratch marks all over the walls of the elevator. After investigation, the woman was trapped in the elevator when the power to the lift was cut. The scene was in Xi'an. After police investigation, the elevator was broken down during January. 2 repairmen came on the 30th for repairs and yelled into the lift to check for survivors. Because nobody responded, they have decided to cut the electricity of the lift to return for repairs today, 5th March. Upon opening the door, a corpse was found. According to investigation, before the corpse was discovered, the households have protested to the management multiple times for repair until it gave in to demand and dispatched repair team, to which they found the dead body. The management company's manager, however, said that they inspected the elevator on 30th Jan, but due to the repair of the cables requires professionals and Chinese New Year, the repair was delayed till today. The dead woman is a owner of one of the apartments. When she was found, her hand was terribly deformed, and there were scratch marks all over the walls of the elevator. It was 10 p.m. As luck would have it, the water was turned off and I had to go by it. I live on the 8th floor, so I constantly use the elevator. I was sometimes surprised that there was a bare wall next to it, as if there had once been an elevator there. But that's how it turned out. I left the apartment without even taking my cell phone with me. I thought it would be quick. Strangely enough, another one appeared next to my old elevator. New, shiny. So he beckoned me to him. Despite this, I pressed the call button for my elevator. He didn't answer. Broken. Okay, I'll have to go in a new one. I pressed the button and the elevator opened immediately, as if it was waiting for me. Inside it was very old and shabby, which gave me an unpleasant feeling. He was covered in huge scratches. Then the elevator moved. Something didn't feel good to me. Something was wrong here. Damn. I almost screamed when I realized what was wrong. The elevator takes too long. It's already about 15 minutes, and it doesn't even think about stopping. He's just driving. Suddenly the light turned off, but the elevator kept moving. I went to the door and started hitting it with my hands, knowing that it was useless. The elevator was going down. More precisely, he was falling down. Then he stopped, hitting something hard. Suddenly someone started scraping the bottom of the elevator. Then the doors. For a second they opened slightly, and I could see some kind of creature. It was black with horns, as it seemed to me, and without eyes. More precisely, instead of them there were depressions. They were blacker than darkness, and stared at me piercingly. I couldn't move. It was holding me down, then the lights turned on and the elevator doors opened. I was on the first floor. I looked at my watch, almost 12. I was in the elevator for 2 hours. I had no time for water anymore. I turned around to look at the elevator again, but he was no longer there. Just a bare wall, which always surprised me. Now it was clear what she kept. This morning I told all this to my friend. She, in turn, told me this story. Once upon a time, there really was an elevator there. It worked normally, but from June 6, 2006, residents of the entrance began to hear strange sounds in the shaft at night, closer to 10 p.m. Everyone says it's as if someone is scratching something with their claws. It was disgusting and loud. Several people decided to check what was there, and only one remained, raving something about a black creature without eyes that tore his comrades apart. Of course, no one believed him and he was sent to a psychiatric hospital, but the sounds did not stop. Exactly a year later, people began to disappear in the elevator. Those who remained alive raved about a creature without eyes with huge claws. Then we already realized that something was wrong. They couldn't all agree. No one went to check anymore. The elevator was simply removed. Moreover, no one cleaned the elevator itself and the shaft, but only covered it with boards and painted it over. Residents stopped hearing the sounds, but every year, at 10 p.m., the elevator appeared in its original place, and the other elevator became not working, and whoever decided to walk would be killed by this eyeless creature. Listen carefully. Maybe you hear suspicious sounds in the mine.
Finally, I said out loud, bringing in the last bag of things. I was moving into an apartment that I had rented for a short time. The apartment was on the 10th floor, in a new building. When I was bringing things in, I noticed that at the entrance there was a basket with flowers and a photo of a boy, about 7 years old. As I understood, this boy either fell out of the window or something happened at the entrance. I worked as a sales manager in one company. Every morning I got up at 7 a.m., but I liked the work and I always went to it in a good mood. I traveled by public transport. Fortunately, my work was not far away, just 15 minutes away sometimes. After work, I walked home, if the weather permitted. Everything was going great, quiet neighbors, clean yard, good job. But then, one Thursday, I got ready for work as usual, drank coffee, went out into the entrance and called the elevator. Pressing the button for the first floor, I went. And then it occurred to me that I was driving longer than usual. It seemed that during this time I could climb back up. And then the elevator stopped. I was about to get out, when suddenly the elevator jerked and began to quickly fall down. I was seriously scared. I thought I was finished. There was nothing to hold on to. But then the elevator suddenly slowed down and stopped. My heart was pounding and my hands were shaking like an alcoholic. Having come to my senses, I pressed the button to call the elevator operator and told him what happened. He calmed me down and said that he would now send repairmen and they would quickly get me up. I calmed down and began to wait. Looking at the clock on my phone, I of course realized that I would be late for work, but I couldn't call because lost connection. I began to wait. I whiled away the time by looking through my vacation photos. I was in Prague, first time abroad. I visited many famous places, tried Czech beer, took many videos and photos as souvenirs. About 10 minutes passed, and then, to my right, on the side of the buttons, something began to scratch the wall of the elevator. I stood in the center of the cabin. But who could do this in an elevator shaft? The scratching continued, but now tapping began behind me, which turned into strong blows, and there was a feeling that someone was trying to break through the wall and get to me. Naturally, I began to worry. Something incomprehensible was happening here. Hey, who's there? I shouted. Suddenly, the elevator car began to sway from side to side. I tried to stay on my feet. There was nothing to hold on to and I fell almost immediately. But fortunately, this did not last long. Getting to my feet, I began to panic. I couldn't call anywhere, and it seemed like there was no one yet to lift me up. I pressed the button to call the elevator operator, but instead I heard a crash, and then the quiet laughter of a child, which got louder and louder, as if someone nearby was playing music in my ear. I covered my ears with my hands, but it didn't help much. But soon everything became quiet. I didn't press the call button again, and I didn't know what to do at all. It felt like I was dreaming. After some time, the lamps on the ceiling began to blink, very often continuously, and I saw, as it seemed to me, a boy sitting in the corner. And at that moment the light went out. I quickly took out my phone to turn on the flashlight, and as soon as I turned it on, a boy appeared in front of me with a bloody head, who was smiling. Out of surprise, I screamed and dropped the phone. The battery jumped out of the phone. I was about to pick it up, but I was afraid to move because I didn't know what I would stumble upon in the dark. But I clearly heard this boy running barefoot on the floor next to me. Luckily for me, at that moment, the elevator jerked and began to rise. A minute later, the doors opened and I saw a repairman and an elevator operator. Grabbing the phone and battery from the floor, I quickly jumped out of the elevator. Sitting on a bench at the entrance, I tried to catch my breath and calm down. I couldn't believe this happened to me, and who will believe it if I tell you? I looked at the photo at the entrance. It was the same boy who had just been in the elevator. But how can this be? I didn't believe in ghosts. Having come to my senses a little, I went to work. But I couldn't really work. The day lasted agonizingly long. I called a friend and asked to spend the night with him. In the evening, I told him everything that happened to me in the morning. And naturally, he didn't believe me. Later, from neighbors, I learned that the boy in the photo at the entrance fell from a seventh floor window. He was sitting by the open window in the kitchen, and his mother was sleeping at that time. This happened about a week before I moved into this house. Nothing else happened to me. But since that day, I no longer ride in the elevator. Killer Evalator. There was a notice hanging on the freshly painted green front door. Whoever stuck it was quite possibly short. It was located at the intercom level. Although there is a possibility that it was a smart advertising move, the man leans the plastic key to open it and reads the important information. Here Baba Masha, formerly honored teacher of the region Maria Ivanovna, very carefully read all such notices. She put on her glasses with a very proud look thinking. I looked at the black letters on the F4 sheet for a long time. Now it said the following: UV residents. We inform you that from June 1 to June 15, the elevator will be replaced with a new one. We apologize for the inconvenience. So what is this? The pensioner began to mutter under her breath. I now have to walk to the ninth floor. She beeped on the intercom and with great difficulty opened the heavy iron door. The rest of the residents for the most part did not express any dissatisfaction. Quite the contrary. Everyone was sincerely glad that the old ruin, which creakingly lifted residents to the floor they needed, would be replaced with a clean and modern apparatus. Is it possible that in 15 days the entire entrance will turn into fitness? Fat man Anton joked and laughed with a fat smile with 3 levels of chin. It's definitely not in danger for you. One of the neighbors shouted to him one morning at exactly 9 a.m. The workers began knocking. They hammered, drilled, broke. This is how the first week of dismantling the old elevator passed. The second is silence. Some residents have already begun to think that the workers are not doing anything at all, and they will have to climb the steps to their apartments for an unknown time yet. But on the 15th, as stated in the announcement on the front door, the object was handed over. Exactly on time, nice, fast, clean. Not an elevator, but a fairy tale. Everything is in the mind. The buttons are made of glass. There is some kind of special coating on the floor. In the first days, the inhabitants of the entrance, when they entered it, made a sound of admiration, oh oh oh. Or they said, this is what I understand. Strange things began almost immediately. In 3 days. All because the elevator began to move around the floors on its own, although no one called it, and there was no one inside either. At first they even took it for a child's prank, but they quickly realized that it was not so. They called the people who installed it. They spent the whole day checking things, rebooting and reinstalling. They said that this happens and is completely normal. And everything seemed to calm down. But a few days later it all started again. And it would be fine if he went up and down, stopping at each floor. But no, he did whatever he wanted. In some way imaginable only to him, he himself chose the route of the trip. A recorded monotonous female voice out of the blue said sixth floor or overload. Sometimes the elevator took a break from its antics and did not bother us at all. In short, after a while all the residents got used to his innocent oddities. Ms. James didn't even pay attention when upon entering the cabin she saw a flashing red light and a voice from the speaker, overload. She simply pressed button number 1. The doors closed and the elevator seemed to slowly begin to move, but after a while it jerked sharply and stopped. The light blinked several times. Here Mrs. James did not hold back. She started screaming at the top of her lungs, simultaneously cursing everything and everyone. Only after a few minutes did she notice that the elevator operator's mobile phone number was written next to the buttons. The pensioner took her glasses out of her purse, put them on, found her cell phone and tapped the screen of her old iPhone 7. Alex, your terrible elevator locked me out. He stood up and I was stuck in him. Alex, the grandmother yelled, come on, get me out of here, I need to go to the post office. A few minutes later the elevator operator arrived. Mrs. James, are you there? Here, where else should I be? Come on, get me out of here. Now. I'll go quickly reboot it now. The installers taught me. 10 minutes passed. At one point the light blinked again, and it seemed like it was actually moving. James even managed to make a well really expression on her face. But then the elevator jerked again and stopped. A cultured elderly woman, a former teacher, burst out the word of despair starting with the letter F. No, the doors opened on their own. A female voice from the speaker said 5th floor, but they obviously moved him. The elevator with the passengers stood between the 4th and 5th in such a way that one could see the slabs that separated them. Maria Ivanovna began to think, climb to the 5th or climb down to the 4th. Deciding that she was no longer in such good shape to pull herself up and climb somewhere, she decided to bend down and climb to the lower one. Alex, don't turn it on, the woman shouted, and climbed. At this very moment, when she was almost jumping off, the cabin began to move down. The pensioner didn't even have time to scream. The heavy iron chewed her head. Everything happened too quickly. The body of the unfortunate woman remained lying on the 4th floor, painting the floor bright red. The elevator calmly descended to the 1st. The same fat man Anton stood there. He pressed the number 8, and imposingly, without any suspicion, he went. He got to the floor he needed, but the doors did not open. From the 9th he heard the voice of the elevator operator. Mrs. James, are you still there? Not? This is Anton, from 94 apartments. What is it? Has Mrs. James come out? She was in a hurry to go to the post office. No, didn't see her. What about the elevator? Before he could finish speaking, something clicked twice. A woman's voice from the speaker said 1st floor, and the elevator flew down at great speed. The cables broke. The blow was so strong that all the neighbors jumped out of their apartments. It seemed like there was a small earthquake.